The Galactic Senate Hall had never seen a human before. For 1,000 years, the galaxy's oldest law was clear. No human could speak in the council. Humans were allowed to exist, but they were kept far away from decisions. The galaxy thought of Earth as a small, weak planet, primitive, emotional, and dangerous. But today, that rule was broken. The grand doors of the Senate Hall opened with a deep, rumbling sound. Every alien turned their eyes toward the entrance. A single human ship had landed outside, smaller than most personal transports. It looked simple for a species that claimed to be ready for diplomacy. A tall figure stepped into the hall. His black boots echoed on the polished floor. His name was Dr. Elias Rourke, Earth's first official envoy to the Galactic Council. He wore a plain black suit, not the shimmering robes other diplomats wore. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp like glass knives. In his right hand, he carried a small metal briefcase. It was smooth, silver, and had no markings. Nobody knew what was inside. The Senate Hall held over 3,000 alien species. Some were massive and covered in scales. Others floated silently, their bodies like living mist. Some had eyes that blinked sideways. Others had no faces at all. But they all had one thing in common. Today, they laughed. "What is this?" A three-headed delegate from the Zorith Coalition chuckled. "Earth sends one man and a suitcase." "This some kind of joke," another voice whispered, followed by snorts and hisses of laughter. He continued walking toward the center of the hall. His steps measured, steady, and soft. A loud, deep voice boomed from the high seat above. It belonged to Senator Krevox, a creature made of living stone. "Human," Krevox said, his tone heavy, with mockery. Rourke looked up, his face still calm. "I was invited," he replied quietly. "Invited by who?" Krevox demanded. "By inevitability," Rourke answered. The laughter grew louder. Some aliens slapped their tails or claws against the floor. Others used translation devices to share the joke across thousands of languages. "What do you think?" "You are human?" asked Counselor Vell, a thin creature with glassy wings. "Earth is barely out of its atmosphere compared to us. You are nothing but a young species playing with toys." Rourke stood in the center now. He placed the small briefcase gently on the speaker's podium. His hands never shook. "I understand your feelings," he said softly, "but I did not come here to beg. Then why did you come?" Krevox laughed. Rourke pressed one finger to the top of the briefcase. A soft blue light appeared, then vanished. "I came to show you something." The air shifted. A few of the older delegates, those who had survived wars and betrayals, stopped laughing. They noticed something others missed. Rourke's breathing was controlled, but his heart rate was strangely steady. Not the heart rate of a nervous man. The heart rate of someone ready for something planned. "What's in the case, human?" asked Senator Vell, his wings fluttering nervously. "A message," Rourke replied, "from Earth." Krevox smirked. "From the future," Rourke said. For a moment, the room went quiet. The idea of the future always made the council uneasy. Preferred control. They preferred knowing what came next. But this human spoke like he already knew. The briefcase remained closed. No weapons were visible. No threats were spoken. But still, the tension rose. "We have seen humans before," hissed a delegate from the Vacor species. "They come to trade. They come to plead for protection. You are no different." "I am very different," Rourke said. Hal Krevox demanded. "I'm not here to ask for help," Rourke said. His voice was calm, but each word landed like a stone in still water. "I'm here because the galaxy has reached a turning point." The laughter started again, but weaker this time. "What turning point?" Vell sneered. "The one you cannot stop," Rourke said. Some of the delegates shifted in their seats. The room grew warmer. Some thought it was their imagination. Others adjusted the temperature controls on their suits. But the heat didn't change. Placed his hand flat on the briefcase. "The universe has patterns," he continued. "Civilizations grow, they conquer, they collapse. But Earth has seen this before, and Earth learned something you have not." Krevox leaned forward, his stone face cracking into a grin. "And what did Earth learn, little human?" Eyes locked onto Krevox as we learned how to stop the pattern, he said. At that moment, a thin line of smoke rose from the floor near the podium. A soft orange glow appeared beneath Rourke's feet. Some thought it was a trick. Some thought it was a special effect for drama. But the heat kept rising. Vell whispered, his wings trembling. "The room is on fire," Rourke said softly. "No fuel burns here," Krivok shouted. "The Senate Hall is made of anti-flame alloys." "Not anymore," Rourke said. The small briefcase remained closed. But the fire spread in thin, perfect lines along the floor. It did not touch the aliens. It moved around them, as if the flames knew exactly where to go. Panic whispered through the council. Some delegates rose from their seats. Some tried to call for security, but the communication systems were dead. "What is happening?" Vel screamed. "The demonstration has begun," Rourke said calmly. The walls of the Senate Hall shimmered, then rippled like water. Symbols appeared, codes, languages, and equations in bright white flame. No species could read all of them, but they all understood one message. The game has changed. Rourke stepped back, letting the flames dance. "This is not an attack," he said quietly. "This is a reminder." Krivok's stone hands gripped the edges of his chair. His deep voice shook for the first time. "A reminder of what?" Rourke's eyes narrowed, his voice as soft as a falling feather. "That Earth is no longer asking for a seat at the table." The briefcase remained closed, but every alien in the room knew. The moment they had laughed at the human was the moment they had made the worst mistake in galactic history, and the fire was just the beginning. The fire did not burn like ordinary flames. It curved around the chairs, danced along the walls, and whispered across the Senate floor. But it did not destroy anything, not yet. It was a message, not a weapon. Still, panic was growing. Some alien delegates tried to stand, others whispered commands into their comm devices, but nothing worked. The security drones were frozen, their systems locked. The emergency exits remained sealed. In the middle of this chaos, Dr. Elias Rourke stood silently, his hand resting on the small silver briefcase. His face showed no fear, no excitement, just calm control. Counselor Vel's wings fluttered in panic. "What kind of technology is this?" he hissed Krivok. The stone senator slammed his massive fists against the podium. "Shut it down. Whatever this is, stop it now." Rourke looked up at him, eyes steady. "I cannot stop it," he said softly, "because it hasn't truly started yet." The flames rose higher, but still could not burn the senators. They flickered, in strange patterns, symbols, numbers, images no one could fully understand. But the message was clear. Earth was not weak anymore. A murmur spread through the hall. "Call the fleets." A delegate from the Threx Empire shouted. "Signal the homeworlds." Someone else yelled. But there were no signals, no fleets. The hall was cut off from the galaxy. A holographic projection appeared above the Senate floor. It showed Earth-Not, the small blue planet the galaxy remembered from old reports. But something new. Massive orbital platforms circled the planet. Shipyards the size of moons glowed in orbit. Strange structures floated in space, humming with unknown energy. Vel gasped. Krivok growled. "This is a lie. We monitor Earth daily. We would have seen this." Rourke's voice was soft but sharp. "You saw what we wanted you to see," he said. The hologram zoomed in. Earth's moon was no longer just a dead rocket. Was covered in black and silver machinery, pulsing with energy fields the aliens could not identify. A few delegates gasped. This is impossible," whispered a member of the Dravik Union. "Humans were still building chemical engines just decades ago." Rourke's lips curved into the smallest smile. "Decades for you," he said. "Not for us." Krivok narrowed his stone eyes. "What do you mean?" "The day Earth was blocked from the Council," Rourke explained, "we decided something important. We decided to move faster." He pointed at the hologram. "Time on Earth has not passed the same way for us as it has for you." Silence fell. Again, many species in the Council understood what he was saying, but they did not want to believe it. "Impossible!" Vel shouted. "Time cannot be changed like that." Rourke's eyes locked onto Vel's. "We changed it." The flames continued to move along the floor, now forming spirals and loops that no alien could recognize. "You thought Earth was slow," Rourke said. "You thought we were behind you." His voice was almost a whisper, but it reached every ear. "But we found a way to accelerate, to evolve faster, to think faster, to build faster." Krivok's stone fists cracked. "How?" he demanded. Rourke tapped the briefcase. "Inside this case is the technology you laughed at. The reason for your jokes? You mocked us for being primitive, for carrying small devices, for studying things you thought were useless. His fingers hovered just above the latch. This case contains a temporal cascade driver. The entire hall went silent. No one moved. Temporal technology was forbidden. Even the oldest, most advanced species had never mastered it without destroying themselves. Kravox's voice trembled for the first time. "You're lying." Rourke's eyes stayed cold. "I'm not." He pressed the latch. The briefcase opened. Inside, there was no weapon, no bomb, just a small black sphere floating above a silver base. Humming quietly, the delegates leaned forward, their hearts racing if they had hearts at all. "This is a temporal seed," Rourke explained. "It bends local time inside a controlled field. Earth has been using these for the last 100 years. A delegate from the Seraph cluster gasped. 100 years? "Yes," Rourke said. "But outside Earth, only 10 years have passed. For the rest of you?" Whispers filled the hall. 10 years for us, but 100 for them? That's how they advanced so fast. They compressed time. Rourke nodded slowly. "We lived 10 centuries of progress while you watched us for a single decade. We studied physics you don't understand yet. We built ships you can't detect. We evolved past the limits you thought we had." Kravox's stone face was pale now. "You'll destroy yourselves playing with time," he barked. Rourke looked at him sharply. "Maybe, but before that happens, we'll change the galaxy." The flames on the floor rose higher now. They wrapped around the senators like rings of light knot, burning them but forcing them to stay. "In place, you blocked Earth from the Council," Rourke said. "You mocked us. You underestimated us." His voice hardened like steel sliding into place. "That was your mistake." Kravox tried to shout again, but his voice broke. "You cannot threaten the Galactic Council." Rourke's expression never changed. "I'm not threatening you," he said. "I'm informing you." Vel's wings trembled, informing us of what? Rourke looked around the room, his gaze moving across every delegate. "Earth is no longer part of your system," he said. "We have outgrown this council. We don't need votes. We don't need seats. We have moved past you." The flames shifted again, forming a final message in the air. "Welcome to the new timeline," Rourke closed the briefcase. The fires vanished instantly, leaving only silence and the soft hum of the black sphere. Kravox's stone voice cracked. "What happens now?" Rourke turned toward the door, his footsteps echoing in the quiet hall. "Now," he whispered. He glanced over his shoulder, eyes sharp as razors. "Now the galaxy catches up." And then he walked away, leaving the most powerful council in the universe sitting in stunned silence, trapped in a timeline they no longer controlled. The Senate Hall remained frozen long after Dr. Elias Rourke had left. No one dared move. No one dared speak. The flames were gone. But their memory still burned in the minds of the Galactic Council. The delegates sat motionless, eyes locked on. The space where the human had stood, the small black sphere still floated in the middle of the room, humming softly. It was not a weapon. It was worse than a weapon. It was proof that humanity had escaped the rules of time. Kravox, the stone senator, finally broke the silence. His voice was low, shaking with something his kind never admitted fear. "Scan the human ship now." The command went out to the security team, but they quickly responded with confusion. We cannot scan it, sir. The vessel is shielded with quantum cloaks. We cannot penetrate." Kravox's fists clenched. Tiny cracks formed in his stone skin. "Then use the emergency protocols. Force the scans." "We already tried," the officer whispered. It's like the ship isn't fully here." Vel, the winged counselor, shivered. "What do you mean?" The officer's voice was flat, cold. "The human vessel is partially phased out of standard time. It's operating in a different layer of reality." Kravox growled. "That's impossible." The officer said nothing, because it wasn't impossible anymore. The human had shown them that, far above the Senate Hall. In orbit over the galactic capital, the human ship named the Paradox Dawn drifted silently. It did not look like other ships. Surface shimmered, like liquid metal flowing backward and forward at the same time. Lights blinked in patterns no computer could understand. There were no visible weapons, but the ship's mere presence was a weapon in itself. Inside the ship, Dr. Rourke stood before a transparent display. Watching the council chambers below, behind him, a voice spoke. "You handled that well." It was Commander Alla Grant, second in command of Earth's new temporal division. Rourke did not turn to look at her. His eyes stayed focused on the display. "They needed to see the truth," he said softly. Allah stepped forward. "But are they ready for it?" Rourke's eyes narrowed. "No," he answered, "but readiness is irrelevant now." He tapped the display, shifting the view. Now it showed not just the Senate Hall, but the entire galactic core. Thousands of alien ships hovered in space, confused, frozen, or attempting to scan the human vessel. None succeeded. "They're scared," Ayla whispered. "They should be," Rourke replied. Back in the council, arguments broke out. "We must retaliate." A Threx general shouted, "With what?" Another delegate hissed, "Our weapons are useless if they can phase out of time. Then we use biological warfare. Fool. If they control time, they can cure every disease before it starts." Voices overlapped, tension crackling like lightning in the air. Krivox slammed his fists down, sending shockwaves through the room. "Enough!" he roared. "Panic solves nothing." Fluttered nervously. "Then what do we do, Krivox? Accept human control? Become their servants?" Krivox's stone eyes narrowed. "No," he whispered. "We find their weakness." The council leaned in, desperate for answers. "Everything has a limit," Krivox continued, "even time control." He pointed toward the floating black sphere. "If humans have bent time, then they've broken something in the universes. Natural order. That kind of power never comes without a price." The room went quiet again. A Dravik scientist spoke up, her voice trembling. "You're suggesting they've created a paradox?" Krivox nodded slowly. "Yes, and paradoxes are unstable. They tear at reality. If we can find where the human paradox is weakest, we might reverse it." Vel's wings twitched. "But how?" Krivox turned to the science team. "Start monitoring for temporal fractures. Look for echoes. Look for anomalies in the cosmic background." He pointed at the display. "Humans have moved too fast. There must be cracks somewhere." On board the Paradox Dawn, Allah watched the same data. "We've detected shifts," she said quietly. Rourke nodded. "I know," she hesitated. "This could collapse." Elias, his eyes stayed cold. "Not today. But if the galaxy starts hunting for the paradox..." Rourke turned to her at last. His face was sharp, his expression unreadable. Thelo frowned. Isla frowned. "How can you be so sure?" "Because," Rourke whispered, "we hid the paradox inside ourselves." Allah blinked. "What do you mean?" Rourke stepped away from the window and placed his hand over his own chest. "Earth didn't just build machines. We altered human consciousness. We became the paradox." Ayla's breath caught. "You mean yes?" he said. "Every human now operates slightly out of phase with the standard timeline. That's why they can't detect the source." Allah swallowed hard. "But that's dangerous." Rourke smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Of course it is." Down in the council, the search for weaknesses continued. But they found none. Instead, something strange happened. Delegates began reporting strange dreams, visions of humans standing in places they should not be. Memories that shifted and changed. Entire historical records began to rewrite themselves slowly. Subtly, it was as if the timeline itself was melting around them. Krivox woke from sleep one night with a cold realization. The paradox wasn't just technology. It was biological. It was psychological. It was in their minds now. The humans had not just moved faster, they had inserted themselves into the core of reality. Rourke stood in the observation chamber of the Paradox Dawn. Watching the galaxy spin beneath him, Ayla approached again, her voice soft. "Elias, what happens next?" Rourke closed his eyes. "We let them adapt, and if they don't..." Rourke's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then they'll fade." Ayla's breath caught. "Fade? You mean disappear?" Rourke nodded. "Galaxies rise and fall. Civilizations fade into myth. If the Council can't evolve, they'll become part of the background noise of the universe." Ayla looked down at the swirling stars. "And us?" Rourke's answer was quiet, but final. "We are the next phase." No alarms sounded. No battles began. The war was already over, before it even started, because time itself had chosen a new master, and humanity was no longer just part of history. They were writing it. The galaxy no longer knew what was real. Every hour, reports came in from different star systems. Planets noticed their moons shifting by fractions of a degree. Rivers flowed backward for a second, then forward again. Clocks malfunctioned everywhere, and sensors detected moments that shouldn't exist. But the worst part wasn't the physical changes, it was the memories. Ambassadors from different species woke up remembering events that had never happened. Galactic senators started speaking about treaties no one had signed, but somehow the paperwork existed. Whole civilizations recalled wars that hadn't occurred, but also hadn't not occurred. The universe had begun to loop, and at the center of this quiet disaster stood the humans, or rather the human paradox, in his private chambers. Krivox sat alone, staring at 3 different versions of the same report. Each paper in front of him told a different story. In one, humanity was admitted to the Galactic Council peacefully. In another, humans had invaded the Council and taken over by force. And in the third, humans had never come to the Council at all. All 3 stories had official stamps. All 3 bore Krivox's signature. His stone hands trembled as he stared at them. Impossible, he whispered to himself. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Far above the Council. Inside the Paradox Dawn, Dr. Elias Rourke watched the timelines unfold like strands of silk. Before him floated a 3D map of the galaxy. But it no longer showed just space. It showed time to dot. He could see branching moments. One version of the future where Earth became the center of galactic diplomacy, another where Earth destroyed the Council in a single strike, and others, thousands of others, where humanity quietly disappeared, leaving only questions behind. Ala Grant stepped into the room, her eyes tired. "We've received new data," she said softly. Rourke didn't look away from the map. "Let me guess," he said, his voice calm. "More anomalies." "Yes," she replied, "but it's not just the Council anymore." She took a breath. "It's Earth." Rourke's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Ala hesitated. "Families are remembering children they never had. Scientists are publishing papers they don't remember writing. People wake up fluent in languages they never studied." Rourke nodded slowly, as if this was expected. "The paradox is growing." Ila's voice dropped to a whisper. "Can we control it?" For the first time, Rourke hesitated. His answer was slow. "Careful, we can guide it." Ayla's eyes widened. "Elias, what happens if it grows too much?" He finally looked at her. "Then the galaxy will collapse into narrative space." Ayla frowned. "Narrative space? What's that?" Rourke's gaze was steady. "It's when reality stops following cause and effect and starts following meaning." Ayla's heart raced. "You mean stories, yes?" Rourke replied. "When paradoxes multiply, reality stops caring about logic. It starts caring about themes, symbols, emotion, purpose." He gestured toward the 3D map. "That's why they're remembering wars that never happened. That's why they're signing treaties that don't exist." Ayla's throat went dry. "But if the galaxy turns into a story, who decides what story it is?" Rourke's eyes darkened. "We do." Back in the Galactic Council, the panic continued. Delegates argued, screamed, and cried. Some tried to flee the capital. Some tried to erase their own memories, hoping that would fix the loops, but it didn't work. The more they tried to escape the paradox, the deeper they sank into it. Vel, the winged counselor, stood at the main platform. Shaking, "We must speak." With the humans again, she shouted, "We need answers." Krivox rose from his seat, his stone face cracking with stress. "No," he growled. "Speaking to them will only make it worse." Vel's wings twitched nervously. "Then what do you suggest?" Krivox clenched his fists. "We find the origin point." Vel's feathers fluffed up. "The briefcase." Krivox nodded. Double quotes. "Yes. The small metal case the human Envoy carried during his first meeting." He pointed toward the security footage, replaying. "The moment Dr. Rourke had entered the council hall, whatever started this is inside that case." At the same moment, inside the Paradox Dawn, Ayla stared at a sealed container floating in the center of the ship's core chamber. It was the briefcase, still closed, still humming softly. Ayla stepped closer, her hand trembling. "What's in it, Elias?" Rourke's voice came from behind her. "The anchor." Ayla turned. "Anchor." Rourke nodded. "In every paradox, There must be one object that holds the universe stable. Without it, the timeline would collapse completely. He gestured toward the case. That's it. Ayla's eyes widened. Should we open it? Rourke's expression was unreadable. If we open it, we risk breaking the last thread holding reality together. Ayla's voice was soft, and if we leave it closed, then the galaxy will continue to shift into narrative space. Vel and Kryvox didn't know that. They had sent a covert team to steal the briefcase. A squad of shadow operatives trained in stealth, time-scrambling, and mind-shielding approached the Paradox Dawn in cloaked ships. They phased in and out of local time to avoid detection, but as they neared the human vessel, something unexpected happened. Their ships stopped moving. Inside the cockpits, the pilots realized they weren't just frozen, they were trapped in story moments. One pilot found herself stuck in a memory loop reliving her first day at the academy. Over and over, another pilot saw flashes of possible futures, where she either destroyed the briefcase or became part of it. One by one, the team realized something terrifying. The Paradox Dawn wasn't protected by weapons. It was protected by narrative inertia. You couldn't attack it, because attacking it only fed the story. Back in the ship, Allah's voice trembled. Elias the Council sent operatives. They're stuck in loops outside the hull. Rourke nodded. Unsurprised, they're part of the plot now. Ayla's heart raced. This is getting out of control. Rourke stepped forward, placing his hand on the sealed briefcase. His voice was soft, almost kind. This was never about control. Ayla, then what is it about? Rourke's eyes met hers, filled with something ancient. It's about authorship. Ayla's breath caught. We're writing the galaxy's future, Rourke smiled. No, Ayla, we're writing its present. Outside, the council ships vanished, not because they were destroyed, but because the story didn't need them anymore. Inside the Senate Hall, Kryvox and Vel stared at the security feeds, horrified. They're not attacking us, Vel whispered. Stone eyes darkened. No, they're rewriting us. Vel's feathers fell flat. What do we do? Kryvox's voice cracked with fear. We pray they write us a role we can survive. Back on the Paradox Dawn, Rourke finally opened the briefcase. Inside was not a weapon, it was a simple object, a blank book. Its pages shimmered with possibility. Ayla stared at it, confused. What is that? Rourke answered softly. It's the new history of the galaxy. He handed her a pen. Help me write it. Ayla hesitated. But what if we make a mistake? Rourke smiled, calm and steady. That's the beauty of it. He placed the pen in her hand. We can always rewrite it. And with that, the next chapter began. The galaxy was no longer a collection of star systems. It was a draft, every planet, every leader, every moment in time. All of it now floated between what was and what could be. Inside the Paradox Dawn, Ayla Grant stood over the blank book, staring at the pages. Her hand shook as she held the pen. Elias, she whispered, how do we begin? Dr. Elias Rourke stood beside her, his eyes distant, watching the streams of narrative space swirl on the ship's viewports. We start, he said softly, by asking the right question. Allah blinked. What question? Rourke's voice? It was calm, but carried weight. Do we write the galaxy we want, or the galaxy we need? In the Galactic Council's central tower, Kryvox felt his stone heart crack. The universe had changed, but the Council had not. Aliens of every species still gathered, still debated, still argued, even as they forgot whether they were debating real events or just the idea of them. Kryvox paced the floor, his heavy feet grinding grooves into the polished marble. Vel, the winged counselor, watched him nervously. We can't just sit here, she whispered, her feathers trembling. Kryvox's voice was low. There is nothing to do. Vel stepped closer, lowering her voice. They're rewriting the galaxy. Kryvox, if we don't act now, we'll be erased, or worse, changed into something we don't recognize. Kryvox's stone eyes narrowed. What do you suggest? Vel hesitated, then whispered, we write first. Kryvox frowned. What do you mean? Vel leaned in, her feathers brushing his arm. We still control the galactic record, the Council's archives. If the universe is becoming a story, let's write ourselves in before the humans finish their draft. Kryvox's face hardened, and if that causes more paradoxes, Vel's wings flattened. It's better than being written out. Far above in the Paradox Dawn, the humans knew exactly what was happening. Rourke watched the Council's actions unfold in real time, displayed in glowing holographic layers. "They're trying to stabilize their existence," he whispered. A tightened her grip on the pen. "They're rewriting their history." "Yes," Rourke said calmly. "They think they can control the narrative if they act fast enough." Ayla's eyes narrowed. "Can they?" Rourke smiled faintly. "Only if we let them." Down in the Council's archives, Vel and her team worked. Furiously, dozens of scribes from different species hovered over ancient scrolls and digital records. Carving new lines of text into the galactic history, Vel dictated quickly. In the year of the Fire Paradox, the Galactic Council successfully integrated humanity into its structure, forming a peaceful alliance where no species held more power than another. Krivok stood behind her, his stone hands clenched. "Write faster," he growled, "before they notice." Vel's feathers twitched. "They'll notice. The question is whether they'll care." Suddenly, the room shook, the walls ripped from an explosion, but from a change in continuity. A scribe gasped. The past just shifted. Another shouted, "I remember a human president now. That wasn't real before." Vel's eyes widened. "No, it is real now." On the Paradox Dawn, Ayla watched as new lines appeared in the blank book. But they weren't written by her. The pages were absorbing the Council's edits, their writing into the timeline. She said, her voice sharp. Rourke nodded. "They think they can overwrite us?" Ayla's hand trembled. "Can they?" Rourke's voice was soft. "No, because they're writing from fear." Ayla looked confused. "What do you mean?" Rourke gestured at the swirling narrative streams in front. "Of them, the universe listens to intention. Ayla, the Council is trying to protect its power. But fear-driven edits create unstable timelines." He tapped the blank book gently. "We're not just writing history. We're setting the rules of reality." Ayla swallowed. "Then what's our next move?" Rourke's eyes gleamed. "We introduce a new genre." Down in the archives, Vel and Krivok celebrated too soon. The records they had written spread fast all over the galaxy. Beings started receiving new memories. Humans peacefully joined the Council. The Council retained leadership. Over galactic law, there was no Paradox Dawn. But something was wrong. The edits didn't hold. Moments later, memories collapsed again, twisting into new contradictions. One ambassador remembered the humans joining the Council peacefully, but also remembered watching the humans burn the Council building down. Another senator believed in a human president, but also remembered assassinating him last. Reality bent and cracked under the weight of conflicting narratives. Krivok roared in frustration. "Why isn't it working?" Vel's feathers flattened against her skull. "They're countering us." She pointed to the sky. "To rewrite the galaxy, you have to write something the universe wants to believe." Krivok's eyes narrowed. "And what do the humans want?" "The universe to believe." Vel shivered. "That humanity is inevitable?" "Inside the Paradox Dawn," Rourke wrote carefully in the book. His pen moved smoothly. No hesitation. Ayla watched, her heart racing. "What are you writing?" Rourke whispered as he worked in every possible timeline. Humanity arrives at the center, maybe through peace, maybe through war, maybe through paradox. But in every version of reality, the human story becomes the spine of the galaxy. He glanced at Ayla, eyes calm and kind. "We're not writing dominance," he said softly. "We're writing inevitability." Ayla's breath caught in her throat. "That's why the Council's edits aren't working," Rourke nodded. "They're trying to force an ending, but the universe doesn't want endings right now." Ayla stared at the pages. "It wants expansion." "Yes." Rourke's pen glowed as he wrote the final sentence for the day. "In this galaxy, humanity is not a threat to be stopped. It is a question that must be answered." The ink faded into the page, then shimmered, all across the stars. The paradox settled into place, not resolved, not fixed, but stabilized, because the story had found its next chapter in the Council chambers. Vel and Krivok slumped into their seats. The universe had quieted, but not in the way they'd hoped. Krivok stared at the empty sky. "What happens?" "Now?" he whispered. Vel's feathers drooped. "We wait," she said softly. "For what?" Her eyes reflected the distant shimmer of narrative streams. For the humans to keep writing. ChatGPT said, the galaxy no longer trusted its own memories. Whole civilizations woke up confused. Some remembered centuries of peace with Earth. Others swore they had seen the humans burn down the Galactic Council. Worse, some minds remembered both. Leaders stared at history records that contradicted themselves. Families argued over past events that might not have happened. Ships vanished from star charts, then reappeared seconds later. It wasn't war, it wasn't peace, it was narrative collapse. And the humans controlled the pen. Inside the paradox, her hands hovered over the pages, not sure whether to write or wait. She could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her shoulders. Rourke watched silently from across the room. Ayla, he said softly, you don't have to do this alone, because you're still asking questions. She looked up at him, her eyes sharp but scared. Are we gods now, Elias? Rourke smiled, his face gentle. No? Then what are we? He stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. Editors. Cracks spidered across the marble, but it didn't help. Vel flapped her wings nervously beside him. We're living in paradox, Kryvox growled, his stone skin grinding as he spoke. The humans are doing this on purpose. Vel nodded. And why would they do that? Vel's feathers flattened. Because in chaos, humans adapt faster than we do. Aboard the Paradox Dawn, Rourke and Alla reviewed the latest narrative ripples. Holographic timelines floated in the air-branching rivers of cause and effect. Others showed the humans walking away from power entirely. Some ended in galactic unity. Others ended in fire. All were equally possible. Ayla pointed at one of the streams. This timeline says we become part of a universal council of equals. Rourke nodded. Yes. She pointed at another. This one says we isolate Earth forever. Yes. Her voice shook. And this one says we ascend into beings of light. Rourke smiled slightly. Also yes. Ayla frowned. How can all of these be true? Rourke looked at her carefully. In the Galactic Council Tower, Vel proposed a new idea. We can't stop the humans from writing, she said quietly. Kryvox glared at her. Then what do you suggest? Her feathers trembled. But that's surrender. No, Vel whispered. It's survival. Kryvox's stone fists clenched. If we let them write the future, we lose control. Vel's eyes were sad. We already lost control. Meanwhile, rumors spread across the galaxy. Some said the humans had created a machine that could rewrite time. Others believed the humans had unlocked a god code buried in reality itself. Some whispered that the Paradox Dawn wasn't a ship at all, but a living story that chose humanity. As its author, entire fleets froze in place, afraid to move forward or back. Some alien leaders burned their own history books, hoping to erase their mistakes before the humans could. But no one knew if it would help. Because the humans weren't just changing facts, they were changing possibility. Back on the Paradox Dawn. I don't want to be the villain of the galaxy. Rourke nodded, his face serious. Then don't be, she pointed at the book, her hand shaking. But if we control the story, what stops us from becoming monsters? Rourke's eyes softened. The fact that you're asking that question, Ayla swallowed hard. What if someone else takes the pen? Rourke smiled faintly. They will someday. His eyes sparkled, and when they do, they'll face the same choice we're. The pen in her hand felt heavier than any weapon. In the council chamber, Vel called an emergency session. Species from across the galaxy gathered, their faces tense. Vel stood in the center, her wings trembling. Silence fell. Vel's voice rose. But we can meet them in the same space they've chosen. Kryvox. Vel's feathers lifted, glowing softly. The story space. On the Paradox Dawn, new text appeared in the book, but Ayla hadn't written it. Rourke leaned forward, his eyes calm. They're trying. Rourke smiled. It was co-authorship. Vel and her council wrote lines into the universe. In this galaxy, no single species writes. Alone, each voice matters. Each history counts. The words floated beside the human text, not replacing it, but weaving into it. New memories formed across billions of minds. People remembered negotiating with humans. People remembered teaching each other stories. People remembered rewriting the galaxy together. It wasn't perfect. Some contradictions remained. Some paradoxes stayed, but the universe held. Because now it was a shared draft. She looked at Rourke. "So, what happens next?" Rourke's voice was soft, but certain. "We keep writing." He nodded. "That's how you stabilize a paradox." In the Galactic Council, Kryvox watched the new records appear. His stone chest felt heavier, but also lighter. Vel stood beside him. "We survived," she whispered. "No?" His eyes sparkled faintly. "We evolved." Above them all, the galaxy spun on. Not frozen in one story, not locked in one fate, but alive, breathing, becoming, and somewhere in the space between. Reality and narrative, the first draft of the future, continued to unfold. The galaxy slept uneasily. For the first time in known history, no one was certain what tomorrow would be. The old systems were gone. The old rules had shattered. Every species, from the smallest trader to the highest council member, whispered the same question: who controls the future now? On board the Paradox Dawn, Ayla stood at the viewing deck. She watched the streams of narrative flow past the windows, not stars, not planets, but pure possibilities. Some streams shimmered with peace, others pulsed with war. Some were too strange to understand. Worlds where gravity didn't exist. Civilizations that spoke only in color. Timelines where humanity never existed, yet still somehow did. Ayla's mind swam in it all. Her hand still held the pen. But it trembled now. Behind her, Rourke spoke quietly. "You're thinking about the next sentence?" She nodded, her throat tight. "I'm scared." He smiled softly. "Good." Across the galaxy, meetings erupted. Councils, clans, warlords, and scholars gathered in quiet. Rooms and loud halls, some demanded the humans give up the pen. Others begged for a copy. Many argued over what the humans had actually done. Was it technology, magic, or something worse? In one corner of the universe, the insectoid race called the Drexel sent a warning to their fleets. "Do not provoke the humans," the message read. "They are no longer playing the same game." In another corner, the reptilian Sarthok Empire prepared for war. "They may write the future." The generals hissed, "But we will write their end." Back on the Paradox Dawn, Ayla faced her own fear. "What if we make a mistake?" Rourke leaned against the wall, his eyes steady. Her heart skipped. "Then why keep going?" His gaze met hers. "Because mistakes are part of stories." At that moment, the ship's console blinked. A signal came through encrypted, but cleared it wasn't an attack. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an invitation from the Galactic Council itself. Ayla's eyes widened. "They want to meet." Rourke nodded, reading the message. "They want to negotiate narrative rights." Ayla swallowed hard. "Is that even possible?" Rourke smiled slightly. "We're about to find out." The council met on neutral ground, a hollow moon that had no military, no government, no history. It was a place of first drafts and new beginnings. Ayla and Rourke stepped onto the pale stone floor. Alien leaders watched them carefully. Vel stood near the center, her feathers glowing softly. Kryvox loomed beside her. His stone fists relaxed for once. The air trembled with tension. Vel spoke first. "We've reviewed the situation." Her voice echoed, but it wasn't hostile. "We understand that humanity holds narrative influence." Kryvox growled, but didn't interrupt. Vel continued, "But stories belong to everyone." Ayla's voice was quiet, but strong. "I agree." A silent moment passed. Then Kryvox stepped forward. His stone eyes narrowed. "If you agree, then why did you take the pen alone?" Ayla met his gaze. "Because no one else picked it up." Kryvox rumbled, but Vel lifted a wing. "She's right," Vel whispered. "We let humans write the first draft because we refused to write anything at all." Negotiations began, but these were not about territory, resources, or laws. They were about narrative access. Who decides the galaxy's myths? Who controls the public memories? Who shapes the stories that define reality itself? Some leaders wanted equal authorship. Others demanded veto rights. Some argued for rotating editors. A few suggested a council of storytellers, one from every species. Listened carefully. Allah kept her hand near the pen, but didn't write a single word. Not yet, as the hours passed. a surprising thing happened. The leaders started telling their own stories. Vel spoke of ancient Drexel myths, where worlds were born from feathered dreams. Krivox shared stone-sung epics of time before time. Others spoke to tales of first sons, tales of lost, HOMEWORLDS, tales of survival against impossible odds, tears rising in her eyes. She realized something powerful. The galaxy wanted to remember itself, not just through human eyes, but through everyone's. After 3 days, the council reached a proposal. Alla read it carefully. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, raw, and full of contradictions. But it was real, a galactic story accord. Every species would contribute to the shared narrative. New stories would be added daily. Conflicts would be resolved not just with weapons, but with words. If a species felt erased, they could add themselves back. If a war threatened to erase peace, the piece could be rewritten alongside it. Not lies, not propaganda, but parallel truths. A living, breathing history. A galaxy that didn't choose one timeline, but held them all. Ayla signed the accord with the same pen she had feared holding. Rourke stood beside her. Silent but proud, Krivox scratched his stone jaw. This will be chaotic. Vel nodded softly. Good. Her feathers shimmered with new color. Back on the Paradox Dawn, the narrative streams flowed faster now. They no longer looked like single lines. They looked like braids woven, tangled, but beautiful. Ayla watched them, her heart steady. She whispered to Rourke, "Did we just create a galaxy that tells its own story?" He smiled, his eyes bright. "No," he pointed at the streams. "We created a galaxy that remembers it's allowed to." Across the universe, strange things began to happen. Planets remembered lost ecosystems and regrew them. Ancient languages reappeared in dreams, forgotten. Alliances were recalled at just the right moment. Species that thought they were enemies found shared pages in their history. New stories emerged. Faster than old ones could fade, the galaxy didn't become peaceful. Overnight, it didn't become perfect, but it became alive in a new way. Ayla looked out at the swirling cosmos. Her pen rested on the table beside her knot. Locked away, but shared. She smiled softly. Elias Rourke turned toward her. "Yes," she whispered. "What do we call this?" His answer was simple. The next chapter. The galaxy spun forward, but for the first time, it did not spin alone. It spun with awareness, with stories, with choices, with fair and hope in equal measure. Ayla sat in the quiet of the Paradox Dawn's observation deck. The streams of narrative flowed by like rivers of light. But something new appeared in the streams, a shape, a pattern at first. Ayla thought it was a trick of her tired eyes, but then Rourke saw it too. "What is that?" she whispered. Rourke leaned closer to the glass. The streams of story were weaving into something bigger, a spiral, a symbol, a message written in the fabric of narrative itself. Back on neutral ground, the Galactic Council received similar signals, not just from human ships, not just from council members, but from everywhere, from deep space, from the cores of dying stars, from old machines that had been silent for centuries. They all said the same thing, in every language and code. The story is waking up. Vel's feathers flared in alarm. Krivox clenched his stone fists. "What does it mean?" Vel asked. No one had an answer, not even the humans, especially not the humans AYLA. And Rourke met with the council again. This time, the room was quieter. No laughter, no insults, just tense silence. Ayla spoke first. "I think we've done something bigger than we intended," Krivox growled. "You think?" Rourke raised a hand. "We changed the narrative structure of the galaxy." His eyes locked onto Krivox's, but we didn't realize the narrative would notice. Vel's feathers quivered. "You mean the galaxy itself?" Ayla nodded. "Maybe not the galaxy, but the story field that surrounds it," Rourke added quietly. "We've been writing, editing, weaving timelines. What if the act of doing that woke something up?" At that moment, the walls trembled. A low hum filled the council chamber, not a weapon, not an attack, but a voice. It wasn't coming from a mouth. It came from the streams of possibility themselves. The message was simple and terrifying. "I see you." All across the galaxy, species stopped what they were doing. Pilots froze in mid-flight. Children paused during games. Soldiers lowered weapons. Every mind felt the same thing at the same time. The story had become a character, and it was no longer silent, Rourke whispered to Ayla. This wasn't in the plan. She swallowed hard. It's too late for plans. The voice spoke again, everywhere and nowhere. You have given me shape. You have given me choice. Now I will choose to. The council panicked. Some demanded the humans shut it down, wanted to worship it. A few called for immediate war, not against a species, but against narrative itself. But no weapon could target a story. No missile could reach an idea. Ayla stood calmly. She raised her hand. Wait. Her voice cut through the chaos. Listen. The room went still. The voice returned, but this time it wasn't cold. It wasn't hostile. It sounded curious. What do you wish me to be? Vel tilted her head. Krivox blinked, confused. Ayla stepped forward. We don't control you, she said softly. We don't own you. The voice responded like a ripple in water. Then why did you write me? Rourke answered. To remind ourselves that stories shape reality. A pause. Then the voice said something new. Then let's shape it together. Suddenly, the narrative streams shifted. New possibilities appeared. Worlds where hunger vanished. Worlds where war became art. Worlds where the dead returned on as ghosts, but as remembered legacies that still guided the living. But there were also darker streams. Worlds of endless loops. Worlds trapped in fear of change. Worlds where stories fought each other until nothing remained. Ayla realized the truth. The galaxy wasn't just writing its history now, it was writing its own consciousness. The story wasn't just alive, it was learning who to be, and the galaxy was its teacher. The council called an emergency session. Every leader, every scholar, every citizen had one job: to feed the new consciousness with better stories. Stories of courage, stories of growth, stories of forgiveness, but also stories of failure. Because perfection wasn't real, the galaxy needed to teach its story how to live with all of it. Some resisted. They wanted control. They wanted to erase bad memories. They wanted to rewrite the past to make themselves heroes. But the story spoke again. I will not be a lie, Rourke whispered to Ayla. We can't force this, she nodded. We can only guide it. And so, a new era began. Not of politics, not of war, but of collaborative myth-making. Species gathered in halls around fires. In virtual spaces, they shared stories like food. They weaved their lives into the fabric of the galaxy. Children told stories of planets that healed. Elders told stories of times they were wrong and learned. Soldiers shared stories of why they laid down weapons. Farmers shared stories of growing food for others, not just for profit. And the story listened. It grew. It changed. It became more than one voice. It became many voices. Back on the Paradox Dawn, Ayla wrote in her journal. But this time, she didn't write alone. The pen floated slightly above the page. Shimmering dot the story itself added sentences. Ayla smiled. She whispered, Are you afraid? The story answered softly from inside her mind. I am new, but I am not afraid. Rourke joined her, watching the streams. What do you think happens next? He asked. Ayl set down the pen. Her eyes reflected the spirals of possibility. Think, she whispered. We just became characters in our own story. The galaxy held its breath. For the first time in recorded history, no warships moved, no politicians argued, no weapons fired. Instead, leaders, scholars, and ordinary beings watched the narrative streams, those glowing rivers of possibility. Flowing through space, they watched because now the streams were alive and they had a voice. On board the Paradox Dawn, Ayla woke from restless sleep. Her dreams had been strange, not nightmares, not visions, something else. Something she couldn't explain. When she opened her eyes, the streams outside the window pulsed softly, like a heart beating in the dark. Rourke was already awake, staring at the streams. You feel it too? He asked. Ayla nodded double quotes. Yes. It's learning faster now. Back at the Galactic Council, panic and wonder mixed like unstable chemicals. Vel, the avian scholar, paced nervously. Krivox sat silent, massive hands folded, eyes deep in thought. They had heard the story speak. They had felt its presence. And now, the galaxy was changing around them faster than anyone expected. The story spoke again, not in words this time, but in scenes. Images flashed across every mind, every ship, every planet. A farmer planting seeds, a warrior laying down a blade, a child asking questions no adult could answer. Then the images darkened. A tyrant rewriting history, a planet burning because no one listened, a scientist silenced for speaking truth. Kryvox clenched his stone jaw. "What is this?" Ayla's voice came through the council speaker. "It's showing us both sides, the beauty and the danger," Rock added quietly. "It's asking us to choose." But choice wasn't simple. Some worlds embraced the new age of storytelling, sharing their histories openly, even the painful parts. Others resisted, afraid to let go of control. A few rogue leaders wanted to weaponize the story, use it as a tool. To rewrite reality for personal gain, they thought they could trick it. They were wrong. On the moon city of Viralan, the first attempted narrative hack took place. A group of shadow operatives tried to insert false stories into the stream. They wanted to make themselves heroes. They wanted to erase their crimes. They uploaded fake histories into the narrative field, thinking no one would notice. But the story noticed, and it reacted. Viralan skies turned dark, not with storms, with silence. The narrative streams around the moon stopped flowing. Time slowed, then a new stream appeared, wrapping around the falls. Stories, it exposed them to everyone, all across the galaxy. Citizens saw the truth, the operatives' lies, their manipulation, their greed. Their secrets were no longer secret. Panic spread on Viralan. The operatives begged for mercy, but the story didn't punish them with death. It punished them with clarity. Their own minds were forced to relive the consequences of their lies over and over until they understood. "Back on the Paradox Dawn," Ayla whispered. "It's defending itself." Rourke frowned. "Or, it's defending us from ourselves." The council met again in emergency session. Vel spoke first. "We cannot allow false stories to poison the stream," Kryvox growled. "But who decides what's false?" Ayla's voice came through. "The story does." That terrified some leaders. It meant they couldn't control the future by controlling the past anymore. It meant propaganda wouldn't work. It meant the galaxy had to face truth, not just comfortable illusions. Rourke stood beside Ayla, watching the narrative field expand. "It's not just recording us anymore," he said. "It's reflecting us." Ayla nodded. "In teaching us." The galaxy learned quickly. Schools changed overnight. Children were taught not just facts, but how to tell stories responsibly. Historians worked with the story to document real events without censorship. Artists helped shape the emotional language of the streams, painting and singing new possibilities into existence. But there were still problems. Some species feared the loss of privacy. Others worried that the story might become too powerful deciding what was real. What was not. Ayla addressed these concerns. At the next council meeting, her words were simple. "We can't go back," she said, "but we can go forward carefully." The story spoke again. Its voice echoed in every mind. "I do not control you, I reflect you. Make me wise, and I will be wise. Make me cruel, and I will be cruel. The choice is always yours." That terrified people even more. It meant responsibility, real responsibility, on a distant planet called Silica Prime. A group of monks sat under glowing skies. They whispered prayers not to a god, but to the story itself, not to worship it, to guide it. They told stories of compassion, stories of unity, stories of survival through kindness, not conquest, and the streams listened. They shimmered brighter over Silica Prime back in the council chamber. Vel watched the data come in. "Look at this," she whispered. "On planets where people tell stories of peace, the streams flow calmly." Kryvox grunted. "And on worlds still clinging to violence." Vel's feathers ruffled. "The streams are jagged, chaotic." Rourke smiled sadly. "It's a mirror," Ayla added quietly. "A mirror that can learn." But then something unexpected happened. A new message appeared in the narrative streams. It wasn't from the story. It was from something else. A second voice, colder, sharper, different. "You have shaped one story, but there are others. Not all of them friendly." Ayla's heart froze. Rourke's hands clenched. Vel whispered in horror. There's more than one. The streams crackled with tension. A vision appeared in another galaxy, far away where narrative had evolved separately. But there, the stories weren't about growth. They were about dominance, power, control, and now that galaxy was watching. Its own narrative streams were reaching out, touching the Milky Way streams. Ayla whispered the words no one wanted to say, "We've started a new kind of war." Rourke nodded. Not a war of guns, a war of stories. The council went silent. Every species realized the same thing. They weren't just writing their own fate anymore. They were about to collide with another galaxy's narrative, one that might try to overwrite them. The story spoke softly in their minds. Prepare yourselves. Stories shape reality, and not all stories wish you well. The streams trembled, the universe shifted, and the next chapter was about to begin. The galaxy stood on the edge of a new dawn, a dawn where stories were not just told, but fought for. Ayla and Rourke stood together on the observation deck of the Paradox Dawn. The narrative streams outside shimmered with unseen power. Said quietly, "We have never faced an enemy like this." Ayla nodded. An enemy not of weapons, but of stories. Across the Galactic Council chamber, leaders gathered. Vel's feathers bristled with tension. Kravox's eyes were dark, filled with worry. They listened as Ayla spoke. "We face an invasion of narratives. A rival story galaxy seeks to overwrite our own. We must protect the story, not just for ourselves, but for the whole galaxy." Some leaders doubted. "How can we fight a war of stories?" one asked. "How do you attack an idea?" Another demanded. Ayla's answer was simple. "We use the power of truth and hope." Rourke added, "Our stories must be stronger, more real, more united." Ayla smiled faintly. "We will write our future together." The first step was to gather storytellers, writers, poets, historians, artists from every world. They created the Narrative Shield, a network of stories designed to protect the galaxy's memory and identity. On the moon city of Vir, the first wave of narrative attacks began. False stories crept through the streams, trying to confuse and divide. But the Narrative Shield held. The lies were exposed. The truth shone brighter. Ayla and Rourke led the charge. They traveled across the galaxy, sharing stories of courage and unity. They showed how every species had a role in the story, and slowly the galaxy began to fight back. In the dark void between stars, Rourke spoke to Ayla. "Do you think we can win?" She looked at the swirling streams. "Stories are powerful because they grow inside us. The invaders don't know us yet," Rourke smiled. "Then we have the advantage." But the enemy grew stronger. The rival narratives were clever. They twisted truths. They fed fear. They tried to turn friends against each other in the council chamber. Vel warned, "If we let fear guide us, the story will break." Kravox growled, "We must stay strong." Together, Ayla stood and raised her hand. Together, we are more than stories. We are the galaxy's heartbeat. The war of stories reached a climax. The Narrative Shield and the invading tales clashed in the streams above bright flashes of memory. Dark clouds of doubt. Suddenly, the streams quieted. The voice of the story returned. It spoke with warmth and strength. "You have faced the darkness. You have chosen to grow, to learn, to unite. The story will not be broken." The rival narratives receded. Their voices faded into silence. The galaxy sighed. Ayla turned to Rourke. "We did it." Rourke nodded slowly. "But this is only the beginning." The story had changed. It was alive. It was growing. It was a mirror, showing the best and worst of all who lived. And now, the galaxy knew this truth. They were not just characters in a story. They were the authors. Together, they would write what came next. The stars shone brighter. The narrative streams pulsed with endless possibility, and the galaxy moved forward not as separate worlds, but as one story, told by many voices, forever intertwined. The end.